Greetings and welcome to another edition of HUAA Nation. And today we have with us Dr. Natalie Hopkinson, a writer, cultural strategist, and associate professor of media, democracy, and society at the American University. Her work uses Black and Indigenous art, history, and knowledge systems to ask questions about citizenship, belonging, and freedom. She has worked as a staff editor, a writer, and a columnist at the Washington Post, The Root, and Huffington Post. Her book length essays on the arts include A Mouth is Always Muzzled, Go Go Live, and Deconstructing Tyrone. Since 2019, her work as a co founder of the Don't Mute DC Go Go music and cultural movement activated thousands of people in musical protests in the streets and online. And in fact, Mayor Muriel Bowser proclaimed November 5th, 2021, Pushy Woman Day in Washington, D.C. to honor her success challenging white supremacy and entrenched political interest in the arts. Welcome, 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 welcome.
Thank you.
So we're just going to jump right into it. What's your Howard story?
My Howard story is I had a bunch of friends who came. My friend Kelly Daniels, Dr. Kelly Daniels, shout out to her. She's in Philly now. She would write these letters talking about Howard. We'd gone to high school together, and she would say, "This place is magical." She said, "It's Black. Everything's Black. Even the squirrels are Black. The math is Black. The science is Black." So she was writing me these letters. She was a year ahead of me. And when I got the opportunity, I just applied, and I actually came sight unseen. I had not seen the campus. I had a scholarship from Cox Newspapers chain, and they told me I could choose any of the places that I was admitted to. And so I quickly applied to Howard, and 1994, and best decision I could have made.
Very good, very good. So how would you say Howard has, prepared you for your career journey?
Howard has prepared me by giving me a deep, deep grounding in who I am, in what my place is in the world and in history. So, what I tell people who don't know about HBCUs or Howard, it's sort of like, imagine you're like a white man for 4 years, right? Everything's about you, everything's in your image. You sort of come out like really puffed out. And I came out of Howard. When I came, I had not ever lived in an all Black environment. I was born in Canada. I lived in Indiana. I lived in like suburban places, was tracked, gifted, and talented, where there were no Black kids in my classes. And so this was my real first Black experience. And I loved it. And it has given me a foundation to really walk into any room and with a certain sense of myself and a certain grounding in who I am and what my capabilities are.
Very good. As I mentioned before, jokingly, it's not a joke. The mayor proclaimed, Pushy Woman Day to honor your efforts, and other organizations have named you or coined that you are a flame of inspiration, a cultural influencer, a voice for radical, justice. For a young person, a student, or even us middle career how did you or how do you find your voice?
So I think the first thing was that, being in journalism. So I came to Howard on a journalism scholarship. I did major in political science, but I quickly found community with the other journalists or aspiring journalists on campus, and that sort of is what got me really, really enmeshed in journalism, because I thought I was just going to take the money and run initially, but I ended up starting working at the Hilltop. I was an editor, with people like Natalie Moore and Ta-Nehisi Coates and Russell Rickford and Reggie Royston. Yeah, Russell Rickford, he's at Cornell now. Reggie Royston teaches at Wisconsin. Like all these amazing people, Kenyatta Matthews, the copy editor, like all these amazing people who were there at the Hilltop really helped me to, really just take a lot of pride and joy in being a writer and writing for the
Mhm.
public, and it was just so much fun. Like I remember feeling so empowered, like stuff that was like a joke over drinks the night before ended up in the Hilltop the next day. And it was just like, man, it felt like real, like it really gives you a taste of power. And I remember sitting around the room because I also was interning at, places like the Wall Street Journal and Atlanta Journal Constitution and all these other places. The Palm Beach Post, which is where my family was living while I was in Canada and Florida. I had been in a lot of white newsrooms at the same time. And it sort of made me feel like, well, I don't know when I'm ever going to be sitting around the table with all these Black people who are really getting to set the agenda for what people are talking about, what people are thinking about, how people are understanding what's going on. I did not really I kind of thought, wow, well, I've never seen it in the white newsroom. So maybe this will be the last time that I see that. And what I found is that it's just not true. Like
Mhm.
I've taken that experience and that sort of, I guess, confidence in that my ideas are important, they matter, they're worth sharing. And I've taken that into many other rooms in many other places, and I'm still taking them into all the places that I go. So it's a pretty you know, I definitely would say my voice was very much honed right there at Howard. And then, also, in years of being a journalist, I was a writer for the Washington Post, got used to people yelling at me and getting people got irritated, by all the Black stuff that I was doing. And I didn't care because I was like, as far as I was concerned, I'm in DC. This is Chocolate City. This is a majority Black city. It was in my own mind, I was still at Howard. So I was still doing pursuing all the things that spoke to me and writing the kinds of pieces that were important to me. So yeah, that's a bit about the voice question.
Very much. And we talked about it a little bit off camera, about the intensity, of our classes and, being able to, you had to learn how to speak up because there were a lot
And
of other students
well,
who
that's what
had
we were
things to
talking,
say.
man. After being, so I was always entrapped in the gift, quote unquote, gifted and talented classes, and I was
Mhm.
always the only Black person. But I felt quite comfortable. Like nerds are my people, and I still feel comfortable. I'm at AU teaching, and these are my people too, the nerds. But it's something else to come into Howard where they're all Black. It was really intimidating. So I was just really quiet for a long time because I was like, damn, these people are smart. Like, I think the story I told were off camera. I was freshman year, freshman English, one of the first classes you ever teach. There was this white woman teaching the class who, um, lovely lady. And so she brought in Leon Dash, who had just won the Pulitzer Prize in journalism at the Washington Post for his depiction of a Washington, D.C. family. And me as a budding journalist, I was thinking, wow, well, he won the Pulitzer. So this is like the pinnacle of excellence in journalism. And let me tell you, those other 18 and 17-year-olds were in my class, they let him have it. They said, why did you write all this stereotypical stuff about, is this the only thing you could write about in the Washington Post is, talking about Black pathology? Our professor was so embarrassed, because these students gave it to him. And
Mhm.
my mouth was just hanging open like, what? And I'm telling you right now, it's taken me many years of study and reading and experience to understand what a powerful media critique these freaking 17-year-olds were doing. I mean, now I have a PhD in this, this stuff. And the level of sophistication that they were bringing into the classroom. I mean, these are the people who I was learning from and sharpening my sword next to. So
Right.
pretty powerful place.
No, for sure. I mean, you just can't even, imagine it. I years ago quickly, they took us on a trip. Um, I was a McNair scholar, and they took us to University of New Hampshire, where we were interacting with the students there in Dartmouth, and we're talking. They're like, "Oh my God, are these like your best and brightest, students?" Because we obviously we had things to say. We would talk about the contradictions and challenge the professors, And so the dean at the time, Dr. Orlando Taylor, he looks over at them. He's like, all Howard University students are, the best and the brightest. And I just thought that was the, funniest thing. But that what you're talking about is, what happened in terms of, and even hearing you say it, I never really thought about, the sharpening of the mind and the sharpening of, identity and who you are. And, your standpoint was really, birthed, if you will, in those classrooms, at Howard. So I
And I'm
really
just,
appreciate that.
what's so strange about, I mean, again, I'm just thinking about this now. I haven't thought about this in years. So you're bringing this out of me. um, there wasn't even a language really to describe like that, why it was some BS that he had published,
Right.
and why this is, but it was just sort of like, they read it and they had a very certain feeling about it and they went in on it. I've since acquired the real language, the sort of critical lens to really look at these dominant messages, these dominant images in media. And so, back then though, it took me years before I could I was a little bit embarrassed like the teacher was, because I'm like,
Like, what the
this
heck?
is a black man. This is a black man who just won the Pulitzer Prize in journalism. So put some respect on his name. But you know what? If you can't challenge him, like that is the place to challenge him, is in that classroom. And people who come to Howard need to know you're not going to, you're not going to have some passive listeners. There are going to be people who, if they read something and they have a feeling about it, they feel empowered to just say it and say it like it is, and provide that alternate view on pretty much all the issues that we know. Like, how do we know what we know? Like, it's deep epistemological stuff that's happening there at Howard.
Right.
And again, when you're doing it alongside these other 17 and 18-year-old, and you're kind of going in this whole I just felt like I was kind of pulled along in the stream of confidence and certainty and like validity, that
Right.
was like, it stayed with me ever since.
Absolutely. Well, we're closing out Women's History Month, even though I think we should celebrate women all year, just like Black people. But I do want to ask you. I'm peeking right in the back, and I feel like I see Ida B. Wells behind
You
you.
do. You do.
But I want to ask.
Why?
I'm
I
being
just
nosy all in your house.
literally just got this book today. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And so, who are, I'm going to assume that, she's one, but who are some of the influential women leaders in your life, or women that, you just think in general, people should be more aware about?
Well, I mean, I think there's these people will not be any surprise to this audience. So, I mean, the people who I'll name: Angela Davis, whose scholarship I admire greatly; Zora Neale Hurston, and her work as a cultural anthropologist has been a real beacon for me. But I'll just say this, another Howard alum who's become very important and influential to me is Cora Masters Berry, who was
Mm,
my fellow pushy woman. She was the other woman who was in the mayoral proclamation. And, she was the former first lady of DC. She came to Howard, although she didn't talk about this that much. She a Bison too, came to
yep.
Howard in 1970. And what I really appreciate her is the intergenerational conversation that we have. Like, she's
Mm,
really, like, she's 77 and she sits with me, she talks with me. She has forgotten more than I could ever read,
wow.
as far as like, firsthand look at what the Black Power movement looked like, the civil rights movement. She's been at the center of so many different movements. She's part of a very, very powerful cabal of Black women who made sure that our vice president was also a Black woman, so
Mm-hmm.
she's somebody who I really admire, and sort of like, I think a lot about, my current, some of my current work is, again, looking at these Black and Indigenous knowledge systems. And, one of the big things is apprenticeship. learning with elders, sitting with elders. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can learn. You can learn by reading books, and I do. But there's also a lot of that you can learn by sitting with elders and then
Mm,
letting them give their firsthand experience and having them, give you some good critical support, which she has. So we were how we were named Pushy Women Day was we were both serving on the Arts Commission. As you had mentioned, I was co-founder of the Don't Mute DC movement. So we had been leading to a lot of like policy changes in DC because of the activism around go-go music. And so Muriel Bowser appointed me to the Arts Commission with Cora Masters Berry. We immediately we were like, what is this nonsense in this
mhm.
place? Like the white supremacy was so blatant
That
and
was
thick
crazy.
and codified in law that we were just like, yeah, no, this isn't going to work for us. And so we literally completely flipped the tables, transformed the whole way that they do business in the Arts Commission. The white rich organizations that took all of it by law without even applying, we reduced how much they got. We gave more to the small upcoming organizations. And
Mhm.
as a result, there was a movement to have us thrown off the commission. There was a lot of backlash,
Wow.
so they tried to push us off of the commission, and um, we just got real pushy. And I created a map where I mapped the arts funding and showed how the racial redlining and arts funding, where 72% of the 72% of the arts funding went to neighborhoods where white people are the majority,
That's
right? And so
crazy.
like, when you do that, you put it on a map, and then my go-go partner Ron Moten, he blew up my map of funding and he put it on the side of a go-go truck, wrote it down U Street, and we ended up they passed emergency legislation to keep me and Cora Masters Berry on the commission, and
Wow.
that was a battle that we won. And one of the reasons why they were saying that we were pushed off, or that they needed to push us off, was because we're too pushy, disruptive. And
Mhm.
my thing was I was 100% disruptive, because that foolishness right there, no.
No.
I'm not going to sit on a commission and stamp that blatant level of racial redlining and black exclusion in this majority black chocolate city. And
Right.
so we celebrated, Muriel Bowser, she did this mock resolution, but you know what? She read it. I have the plaque. It's
It's like it's
right.
real.
It is Pushy Women Day, and we've been busy, but we are going to celebrate Pushy Women Day. One day soon, Cora Masters Berry and I will celebrate Pushy Women Day with Muriel Bowser, who, you know, said that she proclaimed as the pushy mayor of Washington, D.C. She's proclaiming it Pushy Women
Yeah.
Day
I
on
love
our,
it.
yeah.
I love it. Um, so our motto, I believe our motto of truth and service, is forever ingrained in any student who, attends Howard, walks the campus. How have you applied? I mean, you're talking about it, but how have you really just applied that model into your life? Or have you even thought about, how that, just comes to you?
Oh, absolutely. All the time, because I mean, first of all, it's like the truth, right? The truth is that there's a lot of levels of truth that I've been dealing with, as a journalist, writing, and editing, being a writer and editor at the Washington Post and The Root and all these other places, that's sort of like telling truth. Then my work as an academic is all about truth too. Because, one of the things they say about, data is that if you torture it long enough, it tells you whatever you want it to say. And being an academic,
Mhm.
I've had new tools of analysis, new tools of searching and understanding that really help me to elevate these uncomfortable truths sometimes that some people would find disruptive. And so, truth has been really core in what I do. And then definitely with service. I mean, I did my dissertation at the University of Maryland on go-go music. And when I did it, what I was trained as both at Howard and also just as an academic, I was trained that you give back to the communities that you take from. right? Like
Yeah.
my name was on the dissertation. I wrote the book, and I've always tried to find ways to be of service to the go-go community. So it's within that, it's years of like working with them. What do you need? How can I help? That's how I ended up being part of this movement to stop the silencing and criminalization of go-go music. We were able to, through our efforts of making go-go the official music in Washington, D.C. in 2020,
Hmm.
they decriminalized, they took laws on the books that had been there since the 1980s that
Wow.
specifically criminalized go-go music. And that happened, and I'll give another shout out to another Howard alum, Kenny McDuffie, who is a councilman from Washington, D.C. He pushed the legislation making go-go the official music, and specifically took off those, invalidated those laws that made go-go criminal in DC.
Right.
Like how could our music, how could something that's our expression and our music be criminal? But you know
Crazy.
what? White supremacy sort of finds a way to do a lot of things.
A lot of a lot of things. And I enjoyed the documentary. I watched it and I was just it was a love song, to DC and to a lot of the, go-go greats. But, anytime I see something that just like, that documentary, it's a love song to DC, in the culture. And it's very unique. So
It is. It's
shout
very
out to
black.
DC.
This
It's very
diaspora
black.
work, as somebody who my family's from Guyana. When I first heard it, it was like,
What is that?
it's just like what? Like it's something different if you're used to hip hop, right? But I mean, you look at the Afro Latin rhythms and all the layers of percussion, the timbales, cowbells, all those things that that make in the music. It's very much at home. A lot of my research recently, I've been going into the continent, um,
Hmm.
and West Africa, and it's a cousin to many of these forms that are very old. That's the other thing is my work is about looking at these traditions, that these Black traditions that we supposedly lost, that are gone, that were erased during the slave trade. Are
Hmm.
it's not true. We hold them in our spirits, in our hearts, in our food, in our the way that we worship.
Right.
These are traditions that we still have, and it's so beautiful to be able to celebrate them, and protect them.
Yeah, it's in our DNA.
It
It
is.
really is. Yeah, I'm with you there. So this year, our vision for HUAA is Bison Engage, and you are definitely doing that. You are engaging in your community. What should we be looking forward to in the future from you and the work that you're doing?
So right now, I recently went to Cote d'Ivoire,
Mm.
Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire, where I visited with another alum, Ida Molinet, who created the Africa Photo Fair. This is, in the truth and service, and definitely the service spirit. Ida, who's had a very incredible career as a photographer, visual artist, she it's not enough for her to make it, and so she's been doing workshops all over the continent. She's created generations of photographers who didn't realize that they could have a career as a fine artist. And
Wow.
so she moved the festival to Abidjan. So I and my daughter Maven McGann, who's a freshman at at Howard right now,
It's you.
we so we went there and we helped her with the launch, and we're
Nice.
actually going to do a pop-up exhibit of her students,
Wow.
here in DC on April 22nd. So anybody who's interested in learning more about that can visit africaphotofair.com, or they can reach out to me on my website if they're interested in checking out this exhibit, where the work of these artists are for sale. So that's a sort of what I'm looking to do, is doing more diaspora work,
Hmm.
more finding more tradition. I'm also working. I just came back from South Dakota. I'm working on a project with the National Endowment for the Arts, called the National Folklife Network. So I'm one of the inaugural people, sort of deciding how this is going to work, with the NEA. And so I organized a DC delegation, and we're setting up a folklife program at Howard. Even though I'm at EU,
Right.
it belongs at Howard, and at Howard. And so So those are some of the things that, that I'm working on continuing to get started.
Oh, that is fantastic. I am just, I smile like every time I do these because I am just always in awe of what Bison are doing and how we give back to our community. And, you are no different.
Thank
So proud
you.
of you. Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
work
Thank
that
you.
you're doing. I can't wait. And I'm going to have to definitely, check out what you're doing. And you didn't say your website, so make sure they know where your website
It's
is.
so my website is just nataliehopkinson.com is my
Yeah.
website, and you can find my contact information. Again, if you want to hear more about any of the projects I'm doing, I spend too much time on Twitter as well. So Nat Hopkinson on Twitter also.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And again, we're gonna check out your work because you are doing some, some dope stuff. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.